Once upon a time, in the heart of Awka, Anambra State, there lived a young man named Chisom Okafor. He was a mechanic, a skilled one, known for fixing cars with his bare hands and good heart. Life was not easy, but Chisom managed. He had dreams, hunger, and a burning desire to make something out of his life. He was married to a beautiful woman named Amaka. She was slim, dark, and always wore her hair in long braids. Amaka sold skincare products in a small wooden kiosk beside the main market road. They had a daughter together. Her name was Ebube, just 6 years old. She was their joy, their reason to smile on the days when the landlord knocked or when beans was the only food on the table. Chisom's elder brother, Obinna Okafor, was the shining star of the family. He worked in Lagos and had money. People in the village called him Mr. Big Boy. He drove a clean Toyota Highlander, wore gold chains, and talked like he had seen the four corners of the world. To Chisom, Obinna was more than just a rich brother. He was his helper, his role model, his savior. One evening, Obinna came home to the village with a proposal. Chisom, this Nigeria is finished. You will waste here forever if you do not leave. Let me help you go abroad, Europe, Italy. There, you can work, save small, and change your life. Chisom looked at him with wide eyes. You want to help me travel abroad? Obinna smiled and said, Yes, I've already spoken to one of my friends. He knows a travel agency that can help us. I will sponsor everything. That night, Chisom could not sleep. His heart beat like a talking drum. He turned to Amaka in the dark and whispered, Our life is about to change. I will go abroad and come back a rich man. Amaka touched his hand and said, Please, do not forget me when you go. Chisom laughed and kissed her forehead. You are my wife. You are my life. I will build a house for you and Ebube when I make it. The preparations began. Obinna paid for the visa, arranged for the passport, bought the ticket. He gave Chisom 50,000 to buy new clothes before the trip. Everything was moving fast, too fast, but Chisom trusted his brother. A week before the flight, Obinna called a family meeting at their mother's house. He stood and said, Chisom is leaving soon, but he must not leave his wife and child without help. I will take care of Amaka and Ebube. They will move into my compound so that I can watch over them closely. This is family business. The elders nodded in agreement. Their mother, Mama Nkechi, clapped and thanked God. Chisom looked at Obinna with gratitude. He knelt down and said, May God bless you, my brother. You are doing more than a father would. Obinna lifted him and smiled, but deep inside, he was hiding a plan. The day of the flight came. The whole family followed Chisom to the park. Amaka cried like a widow, holding his waist and refusing to let go. Don't stay too long, she said. I'll come back soon, he promised. Little Ebube clung to his leg, asking, Daddy, will you bring me chocolate? Chisom laughed and said, I will bring you a bicycle. They all waved as the bus moved. Chisom looked back and saw Amaka and Obinna standing close. Too close, but he thought nothing of it. Italy was cold, very cold. When Chisom arrived in Italy, everything felt like a dream. The houses were tall, the people were white, the streets smelled like strange soup and cigarettes. He met a Nigerian man named Odogu who allowed him to sleep in his room and later helped him find a small job at a car repair garage. Chisom worked like a madman, morning till night. No weekends, no rests. He washed cars, changed oils, swept floors, anything to make money. Every month, he sent something home. 50,000 naira, 70,000 naira, 100,000 naira when possible. He sent money for Ebube's school fees. He sent money for Amaka's shop. He sent money to fix their leaking roof, and always he sent the money through Obinna. Chisom called home every weekend. At first, Amaka was excited to hear his voice. My love, she would say, we miss you. But slowly, things changed. Her voice became flat. Sometimes she would say, "I'm busy." Other times she would not even pick. When he asked about Ebube, she would say she's sleeping or she's in school. Chisom began to worry. But each time he called Obinna, his brother would laugh and say, "Relax, everything is fine. Your family is doing well." So Chisom relaxed. He kept working, kept sending money, kept trusting. Then something strange happened. Chisom sent 75,000 naira for Ebube's school fees in October. A week later, he received a message from the school principal. She said, "Sir, please, we have not seen Ebube in school for 5 days and her school fees for this term is still unpaid." Chisom was confused. He sent a screenshot of the transfer to Obinna's number. No reply. He called and there was no answer. He called Amaka. Her phone was switched off. Chisom began to panic. He called Odogu and said, "Bro, I need to go back to Nigeria. Something is wrong." Odogu replied, "You just got here. Be patient." But Chisom was not patient. He borrowed money, bought a return ticket and got on a flight to Nigeria. When Chisom arrived at the house he built with his sweat, the compound looked different. New paint, new flowers. The place smelled of air freshener and pepper soup. He knocked on the door, no answer. He knocked again, still silence. Then he pushed gently. The door was not locked. He entered. He saw a pair of slippers on the floor, which was not his. He saw a shirt on the chair, Obinna's. He stepped into the living room and there she was, Amaka, wearing a white nightgown, her eyes wide with fear. Behind her was Obinna, wearing a singlet and boxers, holding a plate of jollof rice. The spoon in his hand dropped. Chisom stood at the door, frozen. Nobody said a word until Amaka whispered, You came back." And Chisom replied, "To my own house." Chisom stood at the door of his own house, staring at his wife and his brother like they were strangers. Amaka's lips trembled. Obinna could not look him in the eye. The room was heavy with silence, but inside Chisom, something had already shattered. "I asked a question," Chisom said, his voice flat and quiet. "I said, is this how you welcome me to my own house?" Amaka took a step back. You didn't tell us you were coming," she said, her voice weak. "I don't need permission to come to my own house." Obinna slowly set the plate of rice down on the center table. "Chisom, please, sit. Let us explain." Chisom raised his hand. "Do not insult me, Obinna. I do not want an explanation. I want the truth now." Amaka collapsed onto the chair and began to cry. Chisom stood still, staring at them both. His chest was rising and falling slowly. He was not shouting. His pain was too deep for noise. "When did it start?" he asked again. Obinna remained silent. Chisom turned to Amaka. "Talk." She wiped her tears. "I don't know. It just happened. I was lonely. You were gone and you slept with my brother." Chisom finished her sentence. Amaka buried her face in her palms. Chisom shook his head slowly. "I left this house in your care. I left my wife and child under your protection, and this is what you did." He turned to Obinna. "You were the one who helped me travel. You bought my ticket and sent me away, so you could have this for yourself." Obinna's voice cracked. It was never the plan, but it became the plan, didn't it? Chisom's hands were shaking. "Where is Ebube?" he asked. "She's in school," Amaka replied. Chisom looked around the sitting room. The couch was different. The curtains were new. The TV was bigger. His photos were no longer on the wall. Everything had changed, except his pain. "I will come back for her," he said quietly. "Do not tell her I was here." He turned and walked out of the house. Obinna called after him, "Chisom, please." But Chisom did not turn back. That night, Chisom slept on the cold floor of his cousin Emeka's room. He could not close his eyes. He lay in darkness, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of a nearby generator. "What do I do now?" he whispered to himself.
In the morning, he called the school and asked to speak with Ebube's headmistress. She answered kindly, "Ah, Mr. Chisom, long time. Are you back in the country?" "Yes," he said. "I hope you've come to visit your daughter. She misses you so much." "I'll come today." After the call, Chisom sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the floor. He felt like he was floating through his own life. Everything was there, but nothing was his. By noon, he stood outside Ebube's school gate. When she came out and saw him, she ran like a bird set free. "Daddy, you are back!" Chisom smiled and lifted her up. "Yes, my princess, Daddy is back." They walked home together. She held his hand the whole way, telling him about her new friends, her class teacher, and how she had learned to spell hippopotamus. He looked at her, wondering, is this my child? Or is she the child of the man who betrayed me? That night, he couldn't take it anymore. He visited a private hospital and requested a DNA test. The doctor told him it would take 2 weeks to get the results. He walked back to Emeka's house with a heavy heart. 2 days later, Amaka came looking for him. She met him outside Emeka's compound. "Can we talk?" she asked. Chisom said nothing but stepped aside for her to sit. She sat down on the bench and held her bag close to her chest. She looked tired. Her face was pale. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "I know I made a mistake," she said, "but please, do not take it out on Ebube. She's innocent." Chisom nodded slowly. "That's why I'm here, because of her." She hesitated. Then quietly, she said, "Before you left for Italy, something happened between me and Obinna." Chisom turned to face her. What happened? She could not look at him. "It was 2 weeks before our wedding. I was stressed. You had traveled to collect your visa documents. Obinna came to deliver your suit. We talked, we drank, and it happened." Tears dropped from her eyes. "I did not plan it. I felt so ashamed afterwards. But 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant and I didn't know who the father was." Chisom closed his eyes. Now everything made sense. The coldness, the fear, the lies. He opened his eyes again. And yet, he still said yes at the altar. Amaka was silent. Chisom stood up. "You knew what you were doing." "I was scared," she said. "I loved you and I didn't want to lose you." Chisom shook his head. Love is not built on lies. She stood up too. "I'm sorry." He looked into her eyes. "So am I." Then he walked away. 2 weeks passed. The hospital called. Chisom returned to the lab to collect the results. The paper was thin, but the words on it were heavy. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. He was not the father. His knees buckled. He sat on the edge of the curb outside the hospital and looked into the sky. There were no clouds, no rain, just blue emptiness, the same emptiness he felt inside his chest. The daughter he loved with his whole heart was not his. That evening, he returned to the house. Obinna was sitting outside on the veranda. Amaka was washing clothes in a basin. They both froze when they saw him. Chisom walked straight to them and handed the DNA paper to Obinna. Obinna opened it. His eyes widened. Chisom turned to Amaka. "You could have told me the truth. I would have left in peace, but you both turned me into a fool." Amaka wept silently. Obinna stood up and said, "I didn't know for sure, but you suspected," Chisom interrupted. "And you chose silence. You chose to build your joy with my pain." Obinna looked at the ground. "I have nothing more to say," Chisom said. "You can keep this house, keep the woman, but you will carry the weight of what you did for the rest of your life." Amaka sobbed harder. "What about Ebube?" "I will always love her, but I will not live a lie anymore." He turned around, and this time, no one stopped him. Later that night, Emeka asked him, "What will you do now?" Chisom looked at him and said, "I will go back to Italy, start over. But this time, I I will carry no one. I will build my life with my own hands for myself. Emeka nodded. You are strong. Chisom smiled bitterly. No, I just have no more tears left. 3 years passed. 3 long, quiet, painful years. Chisom returned to Italy with a broken heart, an empty wallet and no promises left to believe in. But instead of drowning in bitterness, he buried himself in work. He lived like a man with nothing to lose. He repaired engines all day. He took online courses at night. He slept in a shared room with 4 other African men, surviving on spaghetti and dry bread, but he never gave up. Within 2 years, he had risen from mechanic to garage supervisor. By the 3rd year, he had opened his own small car workshop with a loan from a Ghanaian partner named Kwame. People started calling him Oga Chisom. He bought a used car. He sent money home back to his mother. He paid for his sister's wedding, but he never called Amaka and he never asked about Obinna. And he never sent messages to little Ebube. Not because he hated her, but because every time he saw her face in his mind, he remembered everything that was stolen from him. One Friday afternoon, as Chisom was closing his garage for the day, he got a call from Nigeria. It was from Emeka, his cousin. Chisom, are you sitting down? What happened? Chisom asked. Obinna is in prison. Chisom froze. Emeka continued. EFCC picked him up. They said he was laundering money through fake import businesses. He was already being watched before you came back 3 years ago. Chisom leaned against the wall. Where is he now? Oka prison. He was sentenced last week, 10 years old. Chisom felt no joy, just silence. He asked for you, Emeka added. For what? He said he has something to tell you. He's sick, very sick. The doctor said he might not even last the year. Chisom sighed. Let him die with his secrets. But that night, Chisom could not sleep. What if Obinna wanted to confess something deeper? What if there was more? What if closure was finally knocking? A week later, Chisom returned to Nigeria. He landed in Lagos and took a road trip to Oka. The air felt different now. The town was the same, but he was not. He wore clean clothes and he had clear eyes. He had become a man with dignity again. At the prison gate, the warden searched him and asked who he was here to see. Obinna Okafor, he said. I'm his brother. They led him in. The prison smelled like sweat, smoke and regret. They brought Obinna to a bench near the clinic wing. He looked at him. He looked thin, pale. His beard was overgrown. His skin had lost its color. He coughed as he walked. Chisom sat across from him and said nothing. Obinna looked up with watery eyes. You came? I did. Obinna took a long breath. Thank you. Chisom leaned back. Talk. Obinna looked around nervously. Do you hate me? Chisom replied, it no longer matters. Obinna nodded. Good. Then I can die with a clean chest. There was a long silence. Then he began to speak. I never planned to hurt you, Obinna said, but I was already jealous of you long before you knew it. Jealous? Chisom asked. Yes, you were loved. You were good. Even when we were children, Mama always prayed over your head. You were Papa's favorite. Even Amaka, she loved you. Chisom's face stayed cold. You were the better man, Obinna continued. But I had money. I had status. So when I saw a chance to send you away, I took it. I thought if you left, I would finally be seen. Chisom blinked. You sent me abroad just to get me out of the way? Yes, Obinna whispered. And I started chasing Amaka even before you left. The day I gave her your wedding clothes, I kissed her. That same night, we slept together. Chisom clenched his fist but said nothing. She got pregnant and we both agreed to lie. We pretended you were the father. We married her off to you, but I kept visiting, even after you left the country, And when you started sending money, we spent it together. He coughed hard. Blood came out on his handkerchief. Chisom looked at him without blinking. But the day I saw you standing at that door, I knew my shame had come. Why are you telling me this now? Chisom asked. Obinna wiped his mouth. Because I am dying, and because I had a dream. What dream? I saw Papa in white. He said I must confess before I leave this world. Chisom stood up. You have confessed. Now rest in your shame. Obinna looked up at him one last time. I have one request, he said. Chisom turned back. What is it? Look after Ebube. Chisom paused. She's your blood. I know, Obinna said, but she still loves you. She still calls you daddy. She writes you letters. I have them. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bunch of folded papers. Chisom took them. He walked out of the prison with them pressed against his chest. That night, back at his hotel room, Chisom opened the first letter. It was written in pencil on lined paper. Chisom read all the letters, dropped them and covered his eyes. He wept, deep, silent tears. The next morning, he visited the woman who now cared for Ebube, their late cousin's wife, Auntie Chinwe, who stayed in Enugu. She opened the door and smiled. Chisom, you are taller. Where is she? He asked. In the backyard. He walked to the back. There she was, Ebube, now 9 years old, playing with a skipping rope. Her breath bounced with every jump. She looked up and saw him. She dropped the rope excitedly. Daddy! Chisom opened his arms and she ran into them and held him tight. He whispered into her ear and back. The next few weeks passed like a slow sunrise. Chisom stayed in Enugu, visiting Ebube every day. They would sit under the mango tree, eat puff-puff together, talk about school and draw pictures on sheets of brown paper. At night, he would read her bedtime stories, mostly from the Bible and old African folktales. She would fall asleep with her head on his arms, clutching his shirt like she did when she was much younger. And each night, after she slept, Chisom would go outside and stare at the stars. He had finally found peace, not the peace of revenge, but the peace that comes from accepting the truth, forgiving the past and choosing love over bitterness. Ebube was not his daughter by blood, but she had his heart, and that was enough. One bright morning, Auntie Chinwe came to the house holding a brown envelope. It came from a courier, she said. Someone dropped it at the gate. Chisom took the envelope and stared at the handwriting. He knew immediately that it was Amaka. He opened the letter slowly. The paper smelled faintly of perfume and sorrow. After reading the letter, Chisom folded it gently and placed it on the table. Auntie Chinwe sat across from him. Are you okay? She asked. Chisom nodded. I'm not angry anymore, he said. I just feel pity. What will you do? I will adopt Ebube. The next month, Chisom began the legal adoption process. With the help of a lawyer in Enugu, he submitted the documents. The social welfare officers visited Auntie Chinwe's house, interviewed Chisom and ran a background check. 2 months later, the court approved his request. Ebube Okafor became his legal daughter. On the day of the signing, Chisom took her out for lunch. As they sat eating jollof rice and chicken at a small restaurant, he looked at her and said, You are now my daughter officially. She grinned. But I thought I was already. He smiled. You were. This just makes it real on paper. She laughed, her eyes bright. Does this mean I will have your surname now? Chisom nodded. If you want it. I want it, she said. She reached across the table and held his hand. I love you, Daddy. And for the first time in many years, Chisom felt something warm rise inside him. Something he thought had died a long time ago. Joy. 3 years later, Chisom and Ebube relocated permanently to Italy. He enrolled her in school. She made friends quickly. She excelled in mathematics. She joined the drama club and she made a drawing of him one day. A sketch of a man holding a little girl's hand with the words, My hero. He framed it and placed it in his workshop office. Customers would always ask, "Is that your daughter?" He would smile and say, "Yes, she is my blessing." Back in Nigeria, news spread that Obinna died in prison after a short illness. His body was buried quietly. Only 2 family members attended. Nobody cried or posted photos. His chapter ended in silence. As for Amaka, nobody heard from her again. Someone said she moved to the north. Others said she joined a church and started a new life. But Chisom no longer searched. He had already closed that book in his heart. One Sunday evening, Chisom stood by the window of his apartment, watching the sunset with Ebube. She looked up and asked, "Daddy, will I ever meet my real father one day?" Chisom turned to her slowly. "You already have," he said. "A real father is not the one who gives you blood. He's the one who never lets you go." She smiled. "I'm happy you chose me." Chisom hugged her close. "No," he whispered. "You chose me too."